The fluorescent lights of Zarthresh Station's lower commercial district flickered with their usual unreliability. Lee Tamine wiped grease from his hands onto an already stained rag, surveying his nearly empty repair shop. 3 years on the station, and he still couldn't convince most species that a human could fix their equipment properly. Too young, too primitive, they'd say, walking past the storefront of the Zen 3 technician 2 levels up who charged triple his rates. Tamine sighed and returned to the navigation computer spread across his workbench. The Krillian captain who commissioned this repair had already tried to negotiate the price down twice. He'd probably try again when he picked it up. The afternoon dragged on slowly. A few customers glanced through his window, but kept walking. Tamine didn't blame them. His shop was small, cramped, and filled with outdated human tools that looked primitive compared to the sleek alien technology most repair shops used. But those tools worked. They got the job done. He adjusted his magnifying visor and bent over the navigation unit again. The problem was deeper than he'd initially thought. Someone had tried to repair it before and made things worse. Typical rushed work. Tamine would have to rebuild the entire circuit matrix from scratch. His communicator beeped. A message from his sister Hyogen back on Earth appeared on the small screen. Appa, the medical bills came again. Don't worry about it. I can wait a few more months for treatment. Focus on your work. Tamine's jaw tightened. She shouldn't have to wait. The treatments were expensive, but delaying them made the condition worse. He was sending her almost everything he earned, but it still wasn't enough. He needed more customers. Better customers. The kind who paid on time and didn't haggle over every credit. But those customers went to established shops with good reputations, not to unknown human mechanics, working out of cramped spaces in the lower district. The door chime rang softly. Tamine had installed it himself because the standard station buzzers were too harsh and mechanical. This one made a gentle tinkling sound, like wind chimes. He looked up, expecting another lost customer who'd taken a wrong turn. Instead, he saw something that made his heart clench. A small draconis, Hatchling, stood in his doorway. She was tiny, barely reaching his waist, with silver blue scales that caught the flickering light. Her large eyes were wet with tears that ran down her reptilian features. In her small clawed hands, she clutched several glowing fragments of something broken. Tamine had seen that expression before. Pure, desperate sadness. The look of someone who'd lost something precious and didn't know how to fix it. He set down his tools immediately and walked over, careful not to move too quickly and startle her. He knelt down slowly, bringing himself to her eye level. The hatchling flinched slightly but didn't run away. "Hey there," Tamine said softly in Galactic Common, keeping his voice as gentle as possible. "What happened?" The hatchling sniffled. Her translator implant crackled to life with a child's voice. "Broke. Mother's keeper." Guard said, "No fix." Shop owner said, "Waste of time." Each word came out broken by little sobs. "Nobody helps." She held out the fragments toward him with trembling hands. Tamine took them carefully, as if they were the most valuable things in the universe. Up close, he could see what they'd once been. A memory keeper, a draconis device that stored and projected precious memories. The crystalline pieces were warm to the touch and still glowed faintly with inner light. The edges showed where from years of handling. This wasn't just any memory keeper. This was old. This was important. "What's your name?" Tamine asked gently. "Myri," the hatchling whispered. The translator approximated the sound of her actual draconis name. "I'm Tamine. May I try to fix this for you, Myri?" Her eyes went wide with sudden hope. The tears stopped flowing. You can?" Tamine looked at the pieces in his hands. He'd never repaired a draconis memory keeper before. They were incredibly complex devices, combining quantum technology with biological neural interfaces. One wrong move could destroy whatever memories were stored inside forever. But he looked at Myri's face, saw that desperate hope, and knew he had to try. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I promise I'll do my very best. Would that be okay?" Myri nodded quickly, her tail swishing behind her with nervous energy. Tamine stood and gestured to a small chair near his workbench. "You can sit there and watch if you want. This might take some time." The hatchling climbed onto the chair, her legs dangling well above the floor. She wrapped her tail around herself and watched Tammy with intense focus as he carried the broken memory keeper to his workbench. He activated his workstation lights and pulled his magnification visor down over his eyes. The memory keeper had shattered into 7 pieces. The main crystal housing was cracked, but still in one piece. That was good. The real challenge would be the neural interface matrix inside. Those connections were finer than human hair, more delicate than spider silk. They carried the actual memory data through quantum entanglement, break them permanently, and the memories were gone forever. Taming could see why the other shops had refused. This repair was dangerous. Most technicians wouldn't risk it. The chance of failure was too high. But Tameen looked over at Myri sitting in the chair, her eyes fixed on him with total trust, and he knew he couldn't refuse. He picked up his finest tools and began to work. His hands were steady despite his nervousness. Years of military training had taught him how to stay calm under pressure, how to focus completely on the task in front of him. He started by stabilizing each fragment in a magnetic suspension field that would prevent any further damage while he worked. Then he began the slow, careful process of reconnecting the quantum filaments one microscopic strand at a time. The work required absolute concentration. One tremor of his hand could sever a connection permanently. One moment of distraction could ruin everything. Time seemed to stop. The station noise faded away. There was only taming his tools and the delicate work before him. His back began to ache from bending over the workbench. His eyes burned from staring through the magnification visor. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Myri sat perfectly still the entire time, watching every movement of his hands. She didn't complain. She didn't fidget. She just waited with a patience unusual for someone so young. Finally, after 3.5 hours, Taming reconnected the last quantum filament. He carefully removed the suspension fields and held his breath as he initiated the memory keeper's activation sequence. For a long moment, nothing happened. Taming's heart sank. Had he failed after all? Then the crystal began to glow, soft and warm. The light grew stronger until a 3-dimensional holographic image appeared floating above it. A female draconis appeared in the projection. She was elegant and beautiful, with scales similar to Myri's. Her expression was kind and loving as she looked down at a much younger version of Myri in the memory. The hatchling gasped. Fresh tears flowed down her face, but these were different tears. Happy tears. Emperor Day-1 stood in his private chambers aboard the Imperial Dreadnought, reviewing the holographic report floating before him. His granddaughter Myri slept peacefully in the adjacent room, the restored memory keeper on her nightstand. Lee Timeen, human, age 28, he read aloud. Veteran of the human-Krell border conflicts. Military engineer, honorably discharged. Current occupation, independent repair technician on Zarthresh Station. His chief advisor, an elderly draconis named Kongjin, stood respectfully nearby. His financial records show he sends 70% of his earnings to Earth, Your Majesty. His younger sister, Lee Hyojin, requires expensive medical treatment for a genetic condition. Day-1's clawed finger traced through the holographic data. The numbers told a clear story. Taming earned barely enough to survive. Most of his income went to his sister's medical bills. He lived in a tiny apartment in the station's cheapest sector. He ate basic ration packs to save money, and yet he'd spent 3.5 hours repairing a memory keeper for free. He lives in poverty to save his sister, Day-1 said quietly, and still he refused payment from a child he'd never met before. Yes, Your Majesty. Most unusual behavior. The Emperor turned away from the report and walked to the massive viewport. Outside, Zarthresh Station hung in space like a giant wheel, its lights twinkling against the darkness. Somewhere down there, in the lower districts, Lee Tameen was probably still working in his small shop. The memory keeper, Day-1 said, "Tell me about the previous repair attempts." Kongjin pulled up another holographic display. 5 master artisans examined it, Your Majesty. All declared it beyond repair. The neural matrix was too severely damaged. They said attempting repair would likely destroy the remaining memory fragments. Yet this human succeeded. Not only succeeded, Majesty. According to our analysis, he also improved the design. The stabilization field he added is actually superior to the original Draconis engineering. The device is now more durable and less prone to damage. Day One was silent for a long moment. He'd ruled the Draconis Imperium for over 4 centuries. He'd seen countless skilled technicians, brilliant engineers, and gifted artisans. But skill alone didn't impress him anymore. Skill was common among the intelligent species of the galaxy. Character, however, was rare. Show me the security footage from his shop. Day One commanded. The past month, the holographic display shifted. Multiple video feeds appeared, showing different angles of Tamin's repair shop over the past 30 days. Khan Jean had been thorough in his research. Day One watched in silence as the recordings played. He saw Tamin working late into the station nights, his face tired but focused. He saw the human share a small meal with a homeless Zenthari youth who'd wandered into the shop. He saw Tamin help an elderly Krillian carry heavy cargo boxes, expecting nothing in return. He saw customers try to cheat him, and Tamin politely but firmly insist on fair payment. In one recording, a wealthy merchant tried to bribe Tamin to certify faulty equipment. Tamin refused and reported the merchant to station security, even though doing so cost him a potentially lucrative customer relationship. In another, Tamin discovered a customer's supposedly broken device was actually working perfectly. Instead of inventing a fake problem and charging for unnecessary repairs, he simply told the customer the truth and charged only a small diagnostic fee. Fascinating, Day One murmured. In every situation, he chooses integrity over profit. The pattern is consistent, Your Majesty. He appears to possess unusually strong moral principles for someone in his desperate financial circumstances. The Emperor continued watching. The recording showed Tamin's daily struggles. Equipment breaking down. Customers walking past the shop. Bills piling up. Yet through it all, the human maintained his honesty and kindness. There's something else you should see, Your Majesty, Khan Jean said, pulling up a specific recording. This happened 2 weeks ago. The footage showed a Draconis customer entering Tamin's shop with what appeared to be a valuable piece of equipment. The customer claimed it needed repair. Tamin examined it carefully, then shook his head. This is working perfectly. Tamin said in the recording, there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm certain it's malfunctioning, the customer insisted. I've run every diagnostic test I have. Everything checks out. I can't charge you for repair when nothing needs fixing. That would be dishonest. The customer left, looking annoyed. What the recording didn't show was that the customer was actually one of Day One's own intelligence agents, sent to test Tamin's honesty. He passed the test without even knowing he was being tested. Day One observed, Indeed, Your Majesty. Should we proceed with additional tests? The Emperor turned away from the viewport, his ancient eyes thoughtful. Yes, but carefully. I want to understand this human completely before I make my decision. May I ask what decision you're considering, Your Majesty? The position of Imperial Artificer has been vacant for 300 years. Khan Jean, we've interviewed hundreds of candidates. Engineers, scientists, inventors from dozens of species. All possessed exceptional technical abilities. But none were appointed, Khan Jean said carefully, because technical ability is enough. The Imperial Artificer serves as my chief advisor on all matters of technology and innovation. They have access to our most sensitive projects. They influence policy across the entire Imperium. Such a position requires more than skill. It requires wisdom, integrity, and compassion. Kang Jean's eyes widened slightly. You're considering appointing a human? Your Majesty, the political implications. I'm aware of the implications, Day One interrupted, which is why I must be absolutely certain. This human showed kindness to Myri when he had nothing to gain. He maintained integrity when corruption would have been profitable. But I need to know if these qualities are genuine and consistent or merely situational. What kind of test would you like arranged, Your Majesty? Day One walked to a different display and began typing commands. Tests that reveal character. Tests that present moral choices. Tests that show me who Lee Taemin truly is when faced with difficult decisions. Over the next hour, the Emperor and his advisor plan a series of carefully orchestrated scenarios. Each one would place Taemin in a situation where his character would be tested, where choosing the easy path would benefit him, but choosing the right path would cost him something. Start with something simple. Day one instructed, send an agent with a legitimate repair job, but have them try to negotiate an unfairly low price. See if Taemin stands firm or caves the pressure, and if he passes, then we escalate. Present him with a bribe, a significant one, money that could solve many of his problems. See if he can be bought. Kang Jin made notes on his personal data pad, and after that, test his ethics. Have someone ask him to certify dangerous equipment. See if he'll compromise safety for profit. Understood, Your Majesty. Finally, the one said, test his respect for knowledge and culture. Have someone bring him something historically valuable. The morning sun filtered through Zarthresh Station's massive viewports as Taemin packed his tools into storage containers. His hands moved mechanically, his mind numb with exhaustion. He'd spent all night trying to figure out how to tell his sister that her treatments would be delayed. The door chime rang. We're closed. Taemin called out, not looking up. Permanently. Taemin SSI. That voice. He recognized that voice. Taemin turned around quickly and saw Myri standing in his doorway. The small Draconis, Hatchling, looked worried. Beside her stood a tall figure in a hooded cloak. Even with the hood up, there was something commanding about the way the figure stood. Myri. Taemin tried to smile, but it felt weak on his face. What are you doing here? Did the memory keeper break again? No. Myri rushed forward, her tail swishing anxiously behind her. It works perfectly. I came because Grandfather wanted to see you. The cloaked figure stepped inside and slowly lowered his hood. Taemin's heart stopped. Silver-white scales, ancient golden eyes, the distinctive crest markings that every single being in this sector of space would recognize immediately. Emperor Day One of the Draconis Imperium stood in his tiny, failing repair shop. Taemin's legs almost gave out. He dropped into the clumsiest bow of his life, nearly tripping over a toolbox. Why, Your Majesty? I had no idea. I'm so sorry. The shop is a mess. I wasn't expecting. Peace, Lee Taemin. Day One's voice was surprisingly gentle. Please stand. We have much to discuss, and I prefer to speak face to face, not to the top of your head. Taemin stood up slowly, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. The Emperor of the Draconis Imperium was in his shop. Actually in his shop. This couldn't be real. He must have fallen asleep at his workbench, and this was some kind of stress dream. I don't understand, Your Majesty, Taemin said, his voice shaking slightly. Why would the Emperor come to my shop? Myri giggled. Because you fixed Mother's keeper. Nobody else could do it, but you did. Day One placed a gentle hand on his granddaughter's shoulder. Myri, would you mind waiting outside for a moment? The guard will watch over you. Okay, Grandfather. Myri waved at Taemin before bouncing out of the shop. Once she was gone, the Emperor turned his full attention to Taemin. Those ancient golden eyes seemed to see straight through him. Taemin felt like every secret he'd ever had was being laid bare. You repaired my granddaughter's memory keeper, Day One said slowly. It contained images of her mother, my daughter, who died 3 years ago. That device was examined by 5 of the finest artisans in the Imperium. All of them declared it irreparable. Yet you succeeded where they failed. I did what I could, Your Majesty. I couldn't leave her crying. Yes, you could have. Day One moved around the shop, examining the equipment with interest. Most shop owners did exactly that. They turned her away, but you didn't. Why? Taemin wasn't sure how to answer that. Because she needed help? Because it was the right thing to do. The Emperor stopped walking and looked at him carefully. Tell me, Mr. Lee, do you know what happened this past week? Your Majesty, a Zenthari diplomat brought you a perfectly functional navigation core, claiming it was broken. What did you do? Taemin's confusion grew. I ran diagnostics and told him it was working fine. I only charge him for the diagnostic tests. And when a Krillian merchant offered you a substantial bribe to certify faulty life support systems, suddenly, Tamin understood. His stomach dropped. That was you. All of those strange customers. Those were tests. Indeed. Day One nodded slowly. I needed to understand who you truly are, Li Tamin. Your technical skills are impressive, but skills can be learned. Character cannot. I don't understand what this is about, Your Majesty. The Emperor walked to Tamin's workbench and picked up a tool, examining it thoughtfully. There is a position in my court called the Imperial Artificer. It has been vacant for 300 years. The Artificer serves as my chief engineer and technical advisor. They have access to the most advanced technology in the Imperium. They influence policy and innovation across dozens of worlds. Tamin felt like the floor was tilting under his feet. Your Majesty, you can't possibly be suggesting. I am offering you the position. The words hung in the air between them. Tamin couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This had to be a dream, or a mistake, or both. Me, he finally managed to say. Your Majesty, I'm just a human mechanic. I work in a tiny shop in the lower district. I'm nobody. You are someone who showed kindness to a crying child when you had nothing to gain. Day One corrected him. You maintained your integrity when you were offered money you desperately needed. You refused to compromise your ethics, even when facing threats to your business. But I'm not qualified for something like that. I don't know anything about court politics or imperial procedures. I barely understand most alien cultures. I just fix things. And you do it honestly, the Emperor said. Do you know how rare that is? I have interviewed hundreds of candidates for this position over the centuries. Engineers with advanced degrees, scientists with revolutionary discoveries, inventors with patents across the galaxy. All of them had exceptional skills. None of them had exceptional character. Tamin's hands were shaking. He clasped them together to make them stop. Your Majesty, I'm honored. Truly I am. But I need to be completely honest with you. I'm not sophisticated. I make mistakes. I don't always understand complex political situations. All I really know how to do is work hard and try to help people. Something changed in Day One's expression. It softened into what might have been respect. Most candidates would have accepted immediately without hesitation. They would have worried about whether they were qualified later. You're worried about serving properly before you even accept. That self-awareness is exactly what this position requires. Tamin looked around his small shop, at the packed boxes of tools, at the closure notice stuck to his door, at the life he was losing. Then he thought about Hygiene back on Earth, waiting for treatments they couldn't afford, about other humans struggling in the galaxy, facing the same prejudices and difficulties he'd faced. I have one condition, Tamin said suddenly, surprising himself with his own boldness. The Emperor raised an eye ridge, the Draconis equivalent of raising an eyebrow. You wish to negotiate terms with me? Not negotiate, Your Majesty. Just, if I accept this position, I want to use some of the resources to help others. Create a scholarship fund or support program for humans and other struggling species trying to establish themselves in the galaxy, so they don't have to go through what I did. Day One studied him in silence for what felt like an eternity. Tamin wondered if he'd just made a terrible mistake. You didn't make demands of emperors, even reasonable ones. Then the Emperor smiled. Actually smiled. Most people in your situation would ask for personal wealth, family estates, political favors for themselves. You ask for a way to help strangers. Is that acceptable, Your Majesty? 6 months had transformed Li Tamin's life in ways he still struggled to comprehend. The Imperial Palace workshop stretched 300 meters in every direction, filled with technology from 1,000 worlds. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing schematics and data streams. Advanced fabrication equipment hummed quietly in climate-controlled sections. The entire facility had more resources than some planetary governments, and it was all his to use. Tamin stood at his main workstation, studying a Draconis military shield generator floating in a holographic display. The design was beautiful but unnecessarily complicated. 7 backup systems where 3 would work better. redundant power conduits that made repairs difficult, elegant but impractical. He started redesigning it, simplifying the structure while maintaining all the important functions. His fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, reshaping components and streamlining connections. "You're doing it again," a young voice said behind him. Tameen turned and saw Myri sitting on a nearby stool, watching him work. She visited his workshop almost every day now. She found his projects fascinating and asked endless questions about how things worked. "Doing what?" Tameen asked with a smile. "Making everything simpler. Grandfather's advisors complain about it." "They complain about most things I do," Tameen said. But Emperor Dewan seemed satisfied with the results. That was true. The Emperor had supported all of Tameen's unusual approaches, even when the other Imperial engineers protested loudly. Tameen's simplified power systems were 30% more efficient than the old designs. His streamlined manufacturing processes cut production time in half. His easier maintenance procedures reduced equipment failures dramatically. Results spoke louder than complaints. "The council meeting starts in 1 hour," Myri reminded him. "You need to present the medical device." Tameen's stomach tightened with nervousness. The medical device. He'd spent 6 months developing it, combining human bioengineering techniques with Draconis regenerative technology. If the council approved it for production, it could treat genetic diseases affecting millions of people across multiple species, including his sister Hyojin. Right, the presentation. He saved his current work and pulled up the medical device files. "Do I look professional enough?" Myri tilted her head, examining him. "You have oil on your sleeve." Tameen looked down and saw the dark smudge. He quickly grabbed a cloth and wiped it off, then checked his reflection in a polished metal panel. His formal Imperial artificer robes were deep blue with silver embroidery. They felt stiff and uncomfortable compared to his old work clothes. "Better now?" "Better, but you're still nervous. Your hands are shaking." Tameen looked at his hands. She was right. They trembled slightly. "This is important, Myri. If the council says yes, people like Hyojin can get treatment. But if they say no..." "They won't say no," a deep voice interrupted from the workshop entrance. Emperor Dewan walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. Even after 6 months, Tameen still felt his heart race whenever the Emperor appeared. "Your Majesty." Tameen bowed quickly. "The council will be foolish to reject your proposal," Dewan said, moving to examine the medical device prototype on the central table. "I reviewed all your data. The results are excellent." "Thank you, Majesty. But some council members have concerns about my methods being too different from traditional Draconis approaches." "Some council members complain about everything," Day One interrupted with a slight smile. "That's their job. Ignore the politics and focus on facts. Your device works. That's what matters." Myri hopped off her stool and tugged on her grandfather's sleeve. "Can I come to the presentation?" "Please. Council sessions are very boring for young ones, Myri. But Tameen worked so hard. I want to see everyone approve it." The Emperor's stern expression softened when he looked at his granddaughter. "Very well, but you must sit quietly." "I will. I promise." Myri beamed at Tameen. "See? Grandfather knows they'll say yes." 1 hour later, Tameen stood before the Imperial Council in the Grand Assembly Hall. 15 of the most powerful beings in Draconis Imperium sat in a curved row, their faces showing everything from interest to doubt. He activated his presentation. A holographic model of the medical device appeared above the council table, rotating slowly so everyone could see it clearly. "Honorable council members," Tameen began, keeping his voice steady despite his nerves. "I present the regenerative genetic stabilizer. This device combines Draconis cellular regeneration technology with human bioengineering principles. It can treat genetic disorders that currently have no cure." Counselor Bonwa, an elderly Draconis known for being very traditional and resistant to change, leaned forward. His eyes were sharp and critical. "Artificer Lee, your proposal suggests making this technology available to everyone for free. No patents, no profit controls. This is very unusual." "Yes, Counselor. Medical treatment shouldn't depend on how much money someone has. Another counselor named Samin spoke up. That's a noble idea, but impractical. Someone must pay for development costs. Development costs were already covered by the Imperial research budget, Tamin explained, and the device uses relatively common materials. Production costs are low. You want us to simply give this technology away? Bonwa's tone suggested he thought the idea was ridiculous. I want us to help people who are suffering, regardless of whether they're rich or poor. Tamin met the counselor's gaze directly. Isn't that what the Imperium is supposed to do? Protect and serve all citizens, not just wealthy ones. Quiet murmurs spread through the council chamber. Some counselors nodded slightly. Others frowned. Day One spoke for the first time. Artificer Lee, please explain the specific advantages your device offers over current treatments. Tamin felt grateful for the Emperor's intervention. He launched into the technical details. The device repaired genetic damage at the molecular level. It was non-invasive and painless. Testing showed a 97% success rate. It worked on multiple species with only minor adjustments. My sister Hygiene was one of the test subjects. Tamin added quietly. She's been in treatment for 3 months now. Her genetic condition has improved by 85%. Doctors expect full recovery within another month. Counselor Salmon studied the data floating in front of her. These results are impressive. Have you tested this on species other than humans and Draconis? Yes, Counselor. We included Krillian, Zenthari, and Void Strider volunteers in our trials. Success rates range from 93 to 98% across all species tested. The council members talked among themselves in low voices. Tamin stood quietly, his heart pounding hard. Beside the Emperor's throne, Myri watched with wide, hopeful eyes. Finally, Day One raised his hand for silence. The council will now vote. All in favor of approving the regenerated genetic stabilizer for immediate production and free distribution. One by one, hands rose around the chamber. Even Counselor Bonwa, after a long pause where he seemed to be thinking deeply, lifted his hand. 1 year after becoming Imperial Artificer, Lee Tamin stood in the grand ceremonial hall, surrounded by dignitaries from across the galaxy. His formal robes, now familiar and comfortable, bore the emblem of his position, a stylized human hand holding a Draconis star. Today marks a historic occasion. Emperor Day One announced from his throne. For the first time in our history, a non-Draconis joins the Emperor's inner council. Lee Tamin, please step forward. Tamin walked to the center of the hall, very aware of hundreds of eyes watching him. Representatives from the Zenthari Collective, the Krillian Federation, the Void Strider clans, and dozens of other species had all come to witness this moment. Day One rose from his throne and descended the steps, carrying an ancient ceremonial blade. The weapon was thousands of years old, used in important ceremonies since the founding of the Imperium. Lee Tamin, do you swear to serve the Imperium with integrity, wisdom, and compassion? I do, Your Majesty. Do you swear to use your knowledge for the benefit of all citizens, regardless of species or social status? I do. Then by the authority vested in me as Emperor, I name you Counselor and Advisor. Rise and take your place among the Imperium's leaders. Applause filled the enormous hall as Tamin stood. He spotted Myra in the front row, bouncing excitedly despite her formal clothes. Beside her sat Hygiene, fully recovered and healthy, beaming with pride at her older brother. The ceremony continued with traditional speeches and rituals. Tamin's mind drifted to everything that had happened in the past year. His scholarship program had helped over 300 humans establish successful businesses across Draconis space. 90% of them were still operating and profitable. The regenerative genetic stabilizer was now standard equipment in more than 10,000 medical facilities. Over 2 million patients had received treatment. The device had saved countless lives and improved millions more. His simplified manufacturing methods had been adopted throughout the Imperium, increasing efficiency by 40% and reducing costs dramatically. Most surprising was a cultural shift. Human practicality had become a compliment instead of an insult. Other species were starting to view humanity differently, not as primitive newcomers, but as valuable partners with unique perspectives. As the ceremony ended and guests gathered in the reception hall, various ambassadors approached Tameen to offer congratulations. "An impressive achievement, Counselor Lee," said Ambassador Jaiwin of the Zen 3 Collective. "Your species should take great pride in you." "Thank you, Ambassador. Though I hope I represent more than just humanity. The Imperium's strength comes from all our diverse perspectives working together." "Well said." Jaiwin lowered her voice. "Between us, your appointment has encouraged the collective to reconsider our own policies. We've been too rigid in our requirements. Perhaps we've overlooked talented individuals because of prejudices about their backgrounds." "I'm glad to hear that, Ambassador." Similar conversations continued throughout the evening. The Krillian Federation wanted to discuss technology exchanges. The Void Striders were interested in joint engineering projects. Even the normally isolated Arch Collective had sent observers to study this interesting development. Tameen handled each conversation with growing confidence. He'd learned that honesty and directness worked better than complicated diplomatic games. Most species appreciated a straightforward approach. "Counselor Lee, a moment, please." Counselor Bonwa approached, the elderly Draconis who had initially opposed many of Tameen's ideas. "Of course, Counselor." Bonwa led him to a quieter corner. "I wanted to apologize for my resistance to your proposals when you first arrived. I was wrong. Your methods have proven remarkably effective. You were protecting the Imperium's interests," Tameen said diplomatically. "I never took it personally." "Gracious as always." Bonwa smiled slightly. "I've reviewed your latest project proposal, the Universal Communication Protocol. It's very ambitious." "Too ambitious?" "Not at all. I'm voting to approve it. In fact, I'd like to assist with implementation. If you'll accept my help." Tameen felt genuinely surprised. "I would be honored, Counselor." As the evening progressed, Tameen noticed a small commotion near the hall entrance. A Zenthari family had arrived late. Their young child was crying and holding something broken, some kind of mechanical puzzle toy. Without thinking, Tameen excused himself from a conversation with a Krillian admiral and walked over. He knelt down beside the upset child, just as he knelt beside Myri over a year ago. "Hey there," he said gently in Galactic Common. "What happened?" The child sniffled and held out the broken toy. "Broke, can't fix." Tameen examined the puzzle carefully. It was a simple mechanical failure. A small spring had come loose and jammed the rotation mechanism. He reached into his robe pocket and pulled out the small multi-tool he always carried, even at formal events. "May I try to fix it?" The child nodded hopefully, wiping tears away. Tameen worked quickly and carefully. His hands were steady and sure from years of practice. Within 2 minutes, the puzzle cube was rotating smoothly again. He handed it back with a warm smile. "There you go. Good as new." The child's face transformed with joy. Thank you so much." The Zenthari parents stared in complete shock. "Counselor Lee, we didn't mean to interrupt you during such an important event." "No interruption at all," Tameen assured them warmly. "I was happy to help." He stood and turned to return to the reception, only to find Emperor Day One watching him. The Emperor's expression showed deep satisfaction and something that might have been pride. "You left an admiral mid-conversation to fix a child's toy," Day One observed. "Well, the child was crying. The admiral was just discussing supply chain logistics. That could wait a few minutes." The Emperor's laugh was genuine and warm. "This is exactly why I chose you, Lee Tameen. You haven't forgotten who you are. Power and prestige haven't changed your priorities." "I hope they never do, Your Majesty." "I believe they won't." Day One gestured toward the crowded hall. "Look around. Every major species in this sector sent representatives here today. They came to witness the human, who became Imperial Artificer and Counselor. But they're leaving having seen something more important. They saw a person who still kneels down to help a crying child, even during his own celebration." Myri appeared beside them, practically vibrating with excitement. "That was so nice. You're still the same Tameen." "Did you expect me to be different?" Tameen asked, gently touching her crest. "Some people get mean when they become important and powerful. But not you. You're still kind. I just try to remember what's actually important, Tameen said. Helping people when they need it, doing good work, being kind to others. Everything else is just extra decorations. Profound wisdom hidden in simple words, Day One said quietly. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy.